In Jamaica, the words we use to talk about mental distress, they fly quick and fast. And man, are they powerful. They're super common, but they're also just loaded with meaning. So today, we're going to unpack these phrases, right? We're going to try and understand the really deep-seated stigma around mental health, and our guide for this is a fantastic, groundbreaking 2010 study that actually gives these words their name. All right, let's dive in.
I mean, you've probably heard it a million times, right? Maybe on a street corner or just in passing. A simple two-word judgment. Him mad. That's it. It's a label that's designed to just dismiss someone. And you know what? It's a label that really, really sticks.
And then there's this one, har head no good. Think about what that's really saying. It suggests that something is just fundamentally broken. Like it's faulty, It's not working the way it's supposed to. It's a powerful image.
And of course, sicking under the head. Now, this one's interesting, right? Because it frames the issue as a sickness, but it's a sickness that gets completely isolated from any other kind of physical illness. It's put into this separate category all on its own. So what is really going on here? What's hiding beneath these words? I mean, these are not just casual throwaway expressions. They're like windows into this incredibly complex system of belief and social consequences. And that's exactly what the study, Mad, Sick, Head, No Good, does. It helps us look right through that window.
Okay, so before we go any further, we really need to be on the same page about what stigma even is, because it's not just a bad feeling or being mean, right? It's a whole social process. It's this machine that starts by identifying a difference, then it slaps a bunch of negative values onto that difference. And the end result? Shame, fear, and pushing people to the absolute margins of society.
So how does this stigma machine actually work? Well, this model by Lincoln Phelan breaks it down beautifully into 5 steps. It's a great way to think about it. First, you label a difference. Step 2, you link that label to all sorts of negative stereotypes. Then, step 3, and this is a big one, you separate people. You create an us versus a them. And once you have a them, it leads right to step 4. That group loses social status and faces real discrimination. And finally, the secret ingredient, the fuel for the whole thing, power. It takes social power to make all of this actually stick. So that's the academic model, but what does it actually feel like? This quote from a Jamaican woman in the study just cuts right to the bone. She says, "Stigma reduces your humanity." Wow. Let that sink in. It's not just a label, she's saying. It's an active, deliberate erasure of a person's worth. So the researchers in this study, they asked people, what's the main emotion you feel when you think about mental illness? And one word came up again and again and again. Fear. And wow, just look at this. This chart shows you exactly how dominant that fear is. Out of all the emotional responses in the focus groups, a massive 70% were about a fear of dangerousness. Now, it's not all bad news, right? You see, empathy and love are in there, but they are just completely overshadowed by this overwhelming sense of fear.
So you have to ask why. Where does this intense fear come from? Well, a lot of the time it's fueled by these really powerful personal stories of violence. Like this one. It's a harrowing account from a woman in the study. She's talking about how a man with a mental illness attacked her cousin's father and crippled him for life. You can see how just one story, one traumatic event like that, can cement an entire community's belief that they are dangerous people.
And look, this fear, it's not abstract. It doesn't just stay in people's heads. It spills out into the real world with devastating consequences. We're talking about avoidance, ostracism, people literally saying we stay far from them. It leads to discrimination, like losing your job. It leads to exploitation, people taking advantage of someone in a property dispute. And in the most awful cases, it leads to physical and even sexual abuse, because these individuals are seen as easy targets, outside the normal protections of the community. It's truly heartbreaking.
Okay, but this is where the study uncovered something really, really fascinating. It turns out it's not so black and white. The community doesn't just lump everyone together. There's this unspoken internal classification system for mental distress, and understanding this is key.
And here's what that system looks like. In people's minds, there is a massive difference between being mad and being mentally ill. The label mad is slapped on people who are seen as violent, who are maybe homeless, who look dirty, who seem permanently broken. They become them. But the term mentally ill, well, that's seen as something milder, something that can be controlled. It's for people who can still function, people who are still seen as being like us. And so much of it comes down to appearance and how someone behaves. And this quote from one of the participants just sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? A mad person is always a mad person. A mentally ill person is a normal person. They can be controlled. Right there, you see the core beliefs. Madness is permanent, it's unchangeable. But mental illness? That's seen as a temporary, controllable problem that can happen to a normal person. And that belief, that whole idea about permanence and control, it's absolutely fundamental to how this whole stigma thing works.
Okay, so we've talked about the fear, the labels, the really heavy consequences. So the big question is, where do we go from here? How do we actually start to change this story? How do we move away from all this stigma and toward real, genuine support?
Well, the study actually points to history for a little bit of hope. The researchers noticed something interesting. Older participants, people over 40, tended to be more empathetic. And they wondered, why is that? Well, it turns out they remembered these really pioneering public health campaigns from back in the 1970s. It's amazing proof that these kinds of efforts really can work and have a lasting positive impact even decades later.
So the path forward really is about learning from what worked in the past. The study lays out some clear pathways. We need more public education using mass media. We should revive some of those amazing old efforts like radio psychiatry programs or even plays put on by patients themselves to create that direct human connection. And this is so important. Any new campaign has to tackle that mad versus mentally ill distinction head-on. And we have got to challenge the misinformation that automatically links homelessness with severe mental illness.
And ultimately, this is the question that sits at the very heart of everything we've talked about today. It's bigger than just changing one person's mind. It's about changing the entire culture, the entire yard. How do we build a community where someone can be brave enough to say, my mind not at ease, and the first thing they get back isn't hostility, isn't a label, but a genuine hand reaching out to help? That is the challenge, and honestly, that is the hope that this powerful research leaves us with.